Welcome to the world of science fiction where extraordinary tales and boundless imagination come to life. Enjoy The crowd's roars echoed through the arena as Jack stood on the execution platform, gripping his massive axe. He'd done this dozens of times before. An executioner's job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. Today's target was Cora, a violet-skinned alien with glowing eyes and a reputation for being one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. She lay on the weathered stone slab, arms bound, her body barely covered by a scandalously minimal outfit that somehow made her look both defiant and inviting. As Jack stepped forward, her piercing gaze locked onto his, and something shifted. His head swam. Suddenly, he wasn't in the arena anymore, or at least, it didn't feel like it. His mind flooded with vivid, distracting images, Cora smiling at him, whispering in his ear, trailing her fingers down his chest. His pulse quickened, and he tightened his grip on the axe, trying to shake off the bizarre thoughts. "You okay there, executioner?" she teased, her voice echoing in his mind. "Don't tell me you're nervous." Jack's frown, but his confusion only deepened as her smirk widened. The crowd grew impatient, chanting louder for blood. He tried to focus, but another wave of inappropriate images hit him. Cora leaning into him, her lips inches from his, her voice dripping with sensuality. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. "Oh, don't blame yourself," Cora said, her voice now audible in his head. "You humans are so easy to mess with. One look, and I'm in. Like flipping a switch." Jax froze, the axe trembling in his hands. "You're in my head?" "Bingo," she replied, her voice laced with amusement. "And might I add, your imagination is quite vivid." He felt his face flush as the images grew more explicit, and for the first time in his career, Jax faltered. The crowd noticed, and the murmurs began. "What's wrong with him?" someone shouted. "Get on with it," another demanded. Cora's smirk deepened. "What's the matter, big guy? Can't handle a little alien mind play?" Jax gritted his teeth, trying to focus. "Cut it out," he hissed. "Or what?" she replied, her voice playful. "You'll execute me? Go ahead. But judging by the thoughts running through your head right now, I'd say you're conflicted." Jax's frustration mounted, but before he could respond, his body betrayed him. His grip on the axe slipped, and the massive blade clattered to the ground. The crowd gasped. Did he just drop the axe? Is this part of the show? Jax bent to retrieve the weapon, but Cora seized the moment. With a sudden burst of energy, she broke free of her restraints and rolled off the slab. Her movements were as fluid as water, and before Jax could react, she was on her feet, standing inches away from him. "Guess this is my cue to leave," she said, leaning in close enough that her breath tickled his ear. "Thanks for the assist, executioner." She winked and bolted, her lithe form disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the arena. The crowd erupted into chaos. Guards poured in from every direction, and Jack stood there, dumbfounded, his axe still on the ground. "What are you waiting for?" barked his commander from the stands. "Get her back." Jax blinked, shaking off the lingering haze in his mind. "Yeah, right. On it." He grabbed his axe and sprinted after her, cursing under his breath. "What the hell just happened?" Her laughter echoed down the corridor, and he realized she wasn't just running. She was toying with him. Jack stalked through the dark corridors of the arena's underbelly, muttering curses under his breath. He had one job, and now he was chasing the same woman he was supposed to execute. Cora's laugh echoed ahead of him, playful and infuriating, as if she was daring him to catch up. "You're really bad at this." Her voice purred, not from in front of him, but inside his head. "Get out of my brain!" he growled, gripping his axe tighter. Don't be like that. It's not my fault your mind is so inviting," she teased, flashing a memory he didn't recognize, him holding her in his arms, their faces inches apart. Jack stopped in his tracks. "What the? Oh, that? Just a little something I whipped up," she said smugly. "You'd be surprised how good I am at improvising fantasies." "Yeah, well, enjoy it while you can." he snapped. Because as soon as I drag you back to that platform. You won't, she interrupted, stepping out of the shadows ahead of him, her hips swaying provocatively. If you wanted to kill me, you'd have done it by now. Face it, you're curious. Jax hesitated, his gaze narrowing. Curious about what? About why they really want me dead. Her smirk faded, replaced by something that almost resembled sincerity. They didn't tell you, did they? They just said I'm dangerous and handed you a weapon. You blew up a damn starship, he countered. Correction, I was framed for blowing up a starship, she said, leaning casually against the wall. Big difference. Convenient excuse, he said, but his grip on the axe loosened slightly. Cora's eyes softened. Look, I get it. You don't trust me. But if you take me back, you're delivering me straight into the hands of the people who set me up. Think about it. Why would they bother with a public execution for someone they think is too dangerous to live? Why not just kill me quietly? Jax frowned, her words gnawing at the edges of his certainty. What are you saying? I'm saying they don't want justice. They want a show. They want the galaxy to see me as a threat, so no one questions what they're really up to. She stepped closer, her tone softening. Help me prove I'm innocent. You've got nothing to lose except a paycheck. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog of doubt clouding his mind. And why should I trust you? Cora grinned. Because if I wanted to kill you, I could have done it back on that platform. Instead, I'm standing here, giving you the chance to do the right thing. Jax let out a frustrated sigh. This is insane. Welcome to my world, she quipped. Now are you in, or do I need to find another gullible human to help me? He glared at her, but the spark of defiance in her eyes was hard to ignore. Fine. But if you're lying to me... You'll what? Execute me? She teased, walking past him. Face it, you're stuck with me now. They moved cautiously through the labyrinth of tunnels, Cora leading the way with a confidence that irritated Jax. Every so often, she'd glance back at him, her smirk returning whenever she caught him watching her. You really should relax, she said. All that brooding isn't good for your complexion. Do you ever stop talking? He asked, his patience wearing thin. Not when I'm having this much fun, she replied with a wink. As they reached a small, dimly lit alcove, Cora paused and motioned for him to stop. This is where we regroup. I've got a contact who can help us, but we'll need to lie low for a bit. And what am I supposed to do while we're waiting? She flashed him a mischievous grin. We could always get to know each other better. I mean, you already know what I look like naked, thanks to my little slip-up earlier. Jax's face turned red. That wasn't you, ugh, never mind. Cora laughed, her voice echoing through the space. Relax, executioner. I'm just teasing. For now. Jax sank against the wall, rubbing his temples. This is going to be a long night. Maybe, Cora said, settling in across from him. But trust me, it won't be boring. Jax sat in the dimly lit alcove, trying to process the whirlwind of events. Cora lounged a few feet away, casually inspecting her nails as if they weren't on the run from armed guards. Her nonchalance only irritated him further, though he couldn't deny the strange pull he felt every time she glanced his way. So, she said, breaking the silence. What's your deal, executioner? Always this grumpy, or is it just me? He sighed. My deal? My deal is that I had a simple job, show up, swing the axe, get paid. Now I'm here, babysitting a fugitive with a superiority complex. Cora raised an eyebrow. Superiority complex? That's rich, coming from the guy who thought he could kill me with an axe. I could have, he muttered, though his convictions sounded weak even to himself. Sure you could, she said, smirking. Let me guess. You're one of those lone wolf, no attachments types. No family, no friends, just you and your broody little thoughts. Jax shot her a glare. What's your point? My point, she said, leaning forward, is that you're predictable. Tough guy on the outside, secretly lonely on the inside. Bet I could read you like a book. Yeah? And what does that make you? he shot back. Some kind of misunderstood rebel, fighting the good fight against the big, bad galaxy? Cora's smirk faltered, just for a moment. Something like that, she said softly. For a brief moment, the tension between them shifted. Jax could see something in her eyes, pain, maybe regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You don't trust anyone, do you? He asked, his voice quieter now. She shrugged. Trust gets you killed. Figured that out the hard way. Before he could respond, a faint noise echoed down the corridor. Jax tensed, his hand instinctively moving to his axe. Relax, Cora said. It's just my contact. A wiry figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in tattered robes. The stranger's face was obscured, but their voice was gravelly and low. You're late. Had a bit of a detour, Cora said, gesturing toward Jax. This is my new friend. Friend? The figure repeated, their tone skeptical. Long story, Cora said. What do you have for me? The figure produced a small, glowing device and handed it to her. Coordinates. It'll lead you to the evidence you need. But it's heavily guarded, and time is running out. Guards don't scare me, Cora said, pocketing the device. They should, the figure replied. These aren't your run-of-the-mill goons. They're enhanced. Faster, stronger, deadlier. Great, Jax muttered. As if this couldn't get any worse. The figure turned to him. You'd better keep her alive, human. If she dies, so does any chance of exposing the truth. Jax frowned. No pressure, then. The figure disappeared as quickly as they had come, leaving Jax and Cora alone once more. So, what's the plan? He asked. We find the evidence, clear my name, and maybe, just maybe, you'll stop looking at me like I'm the enemy, she said, flashing him a grin. Yeah, well, don't get your hopes up, he replied. As they started down the corridor, Jax couldn't help but notice the way Cora's confidence seemed to mask something deeper. She was an enigma, one he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. But for now, he had no choice but to follow her lead, hoping that this insane gamble wouldn't get them both killed. The facility was a fortress, bristling with security drones, armored guards, and sensors that would make even the bravest bounty hunter think twice. Jax crouched behind a stack of crates, scanning the patrol routes with a mixture of dread and resignation. This is insane, he muttered under his breath. Cora crouched beside him, her expression one of pure excitement. Oh, come on! Where's your sense of adventure? Back in the arena, with my sanity, he shot back. This plan is suicide. It's not suicide, she said, grinning. It's just statistically improbable survival. Jax groaned. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Maybe a little, she admitted. But only because you're so fun to mess with. Focus, he said, trying to ignore the way her smile made his chest tighten. What's the play? Simple, she said, holding up the glowing device. We sneak past the guards, hack the mainframe, and download the evidence. Easy peasy. Easy peasy? He repeated, incredulous. That's your plan? Relax, big guy, she said, patting his shoulder. I've got a backup plan. It involves a lot more explosions, though, so let's hope we don't need it. Before he could argue, she darted out from behind the crates, moving with a grace that seemed almost inhuman. Jax cursed under his breath and followed, his every instinct screaming at him to turn back. They moved through the shadows, evading patrols with a combination of luck and Cora's uncanny ability to predict their movements. Jax couldn't tell if she was that good, or if her powers were subtly influencing the guards, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. At last, they reached the control room. Cora pulled a small device from her belt and began hacking the terminal, her fingers flying across the interface with practiced ease. Hurry up, Jax said, keeping watch at the door. Do you mind? She replied. Hacking a top-secret government facility takes more than 5 seconds. Then work faster, he snapped. Such a charmer, she muttered. The terminal beeped, and Cora's face lit up. Got it! Great! Now let's get out of here before The alarms blared, cutting him off. That happens, he finished, sighing. Guess we're going with Plan B, Cora said, pulling a small explosive charge from her bag. You carry explosives? He asked, staring at her in disbelief. Always be prepared, she said, grinning as she set the charge on the terminal. The first wave of guards burst into the room, weapons drawn. Jax moved on instinct, his axe swinging in precise arcs as he fought them off. Cora joined the fray, using a combination of agility and well-placed kicks to take down her opponents. You're not half bad, Jax admitted as they fought back to back. And you're not as useless as I thought, she replied, her tone teasing despite the chaos around them. The explosive charge detonated, sending a shockwave through the facility. In the confusion, Jax and Cora made their escape, dodging debris and disoriented guards as they ran. They burst out into the night, breathless but alive. Cora held up the device triumphantly. We did it! We're not out of the woods yet, Jax said, scanning the horizon for pursuit. Always the pessimist, she said, shaking her head. Can't you just enjoy the moment? Not when that moment might get us killed, he replied. Cora sighed, but her smile didn't fade. You're impossible, you know that? Yeah, well, you're infuriating, he said, though his words lacked any real heat. They stood there for a moment, the tension between them shifting once again. For the first time, Jax saw something in Cora's expression that wasn't sarcasm or defiance. It was vulnerability, a fleeting glimpse of the person beneath the bravado. Thanks for not turning me in, she said softly. He shrugged, trying to ignore the way her words made his chest ache. Don't thank me yet. We're not in the clear. Maybe not, she said, stepping closer. But for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed him, a kiss that was equal parts gratitude and something deeper. For a moment, the chaos of the galaxy faded, leaving only the two of them. When they finally pulled apart, Cora grinned. Don't get used to it, executioner. Jax smirked, shaking his head. You're unbelievable. And you love it, she said, turning to lead the way into the night. As they disappeared into the shadows, Jax couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this insane partnership might work after all.